You are listening to the Horse Radio Network, part of the Equine Network family.
What a beautiful day for horses in the morning.
You are listening to the #1 horse podcast in the world. Here's your entertaining look at the horse world and the people in it.
I am Coach Jen in Ocala, Florida, and you are listening to Horses in the Morning on the Horse Radio Network for May 2nd, episode 3423. Mary Kitzmiller is out and about gathering intel for upcoming episodes, so sit back and enjoy this previously aired masterpiece from way back in 2017 when the show was live and unedited, so you get to hear all the bumps and bubbles along the way.
Good Thursday morning, everybody. I am Glenn the Geek from Ocala, Florida.
And I'm Mary Kitzmiller from Kemp, Texas, and you are listening to Horses in the Morning on the Horse Radio Network for June 8th, episode 1713. Today's show is brought to you by Horseware. Good morning, Horse World.
What is your favorite day of the week?
You never stop learning. You never stop understanding. It's more in depth than just riding a horse. Knowing that for the rest of my life I could work on this and I'll never stop learning.
Good morning, everybody. Thank you so much for joining us today. It's Mary Kitzmiller Day, Horse Training Day 101, and we're glad to have Mary back. Mary's here the second Thursday of every month, and we're actually here live today, so good morning, Mary.
Good morning. How are you?
Good. You've been out traveling the world over the last month or so. We're going to chat a little bit about that. Also, you've been thoroughly entertaining the auditors with some things going on, but let's find out what Jennifer has to say about today's show.
We've got listener questions with matching trainer answers galore. And James Shaw is going to stop by. He's a Tai Chi instructor, and he helps riders use Tai Chi to ride better. So stay tuned for the fray, folks.
Yeah, we got a theme in today's show. It's pretty much chilling out. Chilling.
Yes, which is what I need. I need it in my life right now.
So let's start with humor today. You've been posting about your adventures with your neighbor. Now, Mary kind of lives in very rural Texas and has some interesting neighbors, and she's not been really happy with them this past couple of weeks.
Yeah, I have to say, I have to specify which crazy neighbor it is because I have a few. There's Crazy Steve, who shoots at the birds in his trees that I'm not sure are really there.
Do you ever see him falling?
No.
No? Well, that's
no.
okay. Well, then
It's crazy.
They might not be there.
Crazy Steve. And I'm not sure where Steve lives because he has a travel trailer that looks ancient and not plugged into anything. And then his actual house, he's building out of semi-truck trailers, and it's 2 stories high, and it's like not finished. Like I can see into the house from the street. So I'm not sure what Steve's got for indoor plumbing, but Steve he's been quiet lately, so that's good. And
It's not a lot of those houses on St. Martin.
Really?
They
were the ship containers.
Ship's containers. Yeah, they were like
Yeah. This is kind of what that is. Yeah.
Yeah. They made houses out of them, and I think it was after they had a big hurricane, and that's what they used for houses after the big hurricane. But my God, it's hot down there, and there were no air conditioners on these things. They must be like 300 degrees inside.
Oh, yeah. And I've seen it where people do them up really cute, the whole tiny house movement, and it's really hip and modern. And
that's not Steve's.
I saw no, Steve's is a box with some lumber in it. And so there's Steve. And then, of course, I've talked before about the neighbor who had to get taken out by the Texas Rangers. That's a whole other story. But no, these are newer neighbors who've moved in next door, and it's got a little bit of acreage, but the fencing is really run down. There's a lot of holes in the barbed wire fencing, and they keep getting animals, and I don't know why. I don't know what their goal is. They're not farming. They're not don't think they're gonna like be eating the animals, or I don't think they're pets because I never see them home. And so, of all the animals that they have gotten that have immediately escaped onto my property, we've had several different sheep, um, and a jack donkey that lasted on their place for all of about 2 minutes. They got a intact jack donkey, so he's like a stud. And of course, we have a mighty herd of donkeys on our side. And you can't have a donkey and leave it alone. You just have it alone. And so this poor little guy, he was actually really sweet, but he popped through the fence, jumped into our pasture, because they will find a way to find what they're looking for. And I had a great, yes. And I have a donkey, a rescue donkey, who is not a jack, but he still thinks he is. So he valiantly defended his harem from, and so we had a epic like wild donkey fight out on the range of my property. And so we had to corral this thing up and keep him for a week. And we basically told him, do not take him back unless you have fencing. This is the theme. Please fix your fence before you buy another animal. So they had one of their friends come and bring a trailer and herd it up and take it, I don't know where, but it's gone. And then the other night we get a text. I guess they sent it about 7:30, but we're in the boonies, so we don't have good cell service. So we get it at 10:30. They're like, we just bought a Beefmaster bull. He's less than a year old, but he crossed over into your property. We'll come get him tomorrow. Like, what? So I don't know if he's broken fencing. I don't know what he's doing. I have a very sweet little baby dairy cow on my side of the property, on my property. So I don't know if he's terrorizing her. And so we're out there with flashlights driving all over the place. They're asleep, because they're going to do it tomorrow. So didn't find a bull anywhere. I didn't find any breaks in our fencing, but, I go on a bike ride the next morning, and I'm about a mile away from the house, and I pass this gigantic bull just on the road, and that was their bull. And I had to convince them it was their bull. I sent them a picture. I'm like, is this your bull? They're like, no, it's not our bull. And so I sent them a picture of this red bull with white stockings, and he's got spots everywhere. They're like, so I sent them that picture, and they go like, that's not our bull. Our bull is a red bull with white stockings. And I'm looking at the picture, looking at the description, I'm like, pretty sure it's the same bull. And then I said, are you sure? Because she said a lot of people, she goes, we've called the sheriff, because they don't have a trailer either, nor do they know anything about animals. So that even if they found him, I don't know how they're going to get him back. And so I said, are you sure it's not your bull? Because she said people have reported it over by the cemetery in our neighborhood. And I said, yeah, that's where I found this bull. And so she sent me a picture. She's like, no, this is our bull. Same bull. I look at it. So I zoom in on the picture that I took, like, so she could clearly see the marking, and send it back. I'm like, this is your bull. And so it was a couple of days before a friend of theirs with a trailer showed up, and they rounded up the bull. I don't know where it came from. I don't know if someone had put it on their property holding it, or if the county had. I have no idea. But what their solution to the problem is I thought maybe like the donkey that their friend would cart it off, they'd realize we shouldn't own animals. No, that's not what happened. They brought the bull back and decided the best place to keep it is a dog kennel, a chain link dog kennel that's like a 6x8 space for this really, really large bull. So, I'm probably going to be making some phone calls in the future.
It's not something that people usually buy. They're not really good for meat when they get that large and older. They're just, I don't know why they bought a bull. Do you think they're bullfighters and they're practicing?
No, I think they just traded it. They really, 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 they're trading. That's what they're doing. They're trading.
Maybe that's
I don't know if it's friends of theirs who are like, I need a spot to keep my bull, and they're like, I got you, buddy, and yet have no fencing.
Yeah.
And oh my God. Well, so if they're getting it for quote unquote breeding, the only other cow they have is this little tiny baby dairy calf that just lives in their front yard, and that thing doesn't escape for whatever reason, I don't know. Their method before to try to keep sheep from coming over to our property.
Oh, they have sheep too?
Yes. Oh, I didn't even go into the sheep. That was so they got this ram and this ewe. And the reason they got the ram was he was so aggressive, he killed another sheep. I'm like, you probably shouldn't have that animal at all. And so this ram and this ewe, and immediately they come over to our place. And then they get this other ewe, and she's pregnant. And all they have is this roofless chain link dog kennel that's in a low-lying area of their property. And it was cold at this time. So we kind of felt bad. She's pregnant. They asked, there was a big rainstorm coming. They're like, can you keep her, while this rainstorm goes over? And so she doesn't stand in the muck and the cold. And we're like, yeah, we'll take her. She has her lambs, 2 of them. And I noticed she's not giving them any milk. And I look at her bag and it looks like she has very old mastitis. So a lot of scar tissue in her udder. So she can't give milk to these babies. So then we're bottle feeding these babies every few hours while they're just hanging out in their house. And then one day, so I guess he decided to get rid of them. This is so sad. I hear the sheep just going, bah, bah. And I'm like, okay, there's a sheep back over here. And I look over the fence to their property, and I see out of this guy's truck, the sheep just leaps from the bed of the truck, and he picks it up and tries to put it back in, and it jumps out again. And I'm like, oh, no. What are you doing? So I guess he got it strapped down somehow, because the next few minutes it's driving down the road, and I just hear bah, as it's going down the road. So yeah, I love my neighbors. I love them so much.
I'd like to say only in Texas, but we've all had neighbors like that.
No. I try to tell people about this particular area, and they're like, oh, that's just the country. I'm like, no, you don't know. This is different.
It's like the Twilight Zone.
That said, I love my ranch. My ranch is fantastic.
It's very
it would
pretty
be
too. I mean, you have it all decorated.
Oh yeah. It'd be millions of dollars anywhere else in the world. So if I have to deal with the crazies a little bit, I guess it's an even trade. I'm still, jury's still out on that one. But
if Trump has any of that fencing left, you could just put it on both sides.
Right?
Yep.
And then I'm going to make my neighbors pay for it.
That's it.
It's going to be the best wall. It's going to be It's going to be fabulous. I'm going to make my neighbor. And they're going to pay for it.
It should be high enough for the bull not to get back.
Yeah.
Let me guess, they have 1,000 chickens too.
Yes, they have chickens and geese that also live in the roofless dog kennel. And then they asked us one day, like, have you seen any coyotes around? We're losing a lot of chickens. I'm like, no. For one, we have 1 million donkeys, so we don't have coyotes. But 2, we put our chickens in a coop.
Yeah, there's more things that eat chickens than just coyotes. So
yeah.
We have a very pretty family of foxes that live in our backyard. Basically,
wow. There's
an arena right behind our house, and then right behind that's another field, and they live in the corner of that field, literally 100 yards from us. And it's mom and dad and 2 kids, and it is so much fun to see little red foxes playing together.
Oh, how
just
cute.
Like little cats or dogs, playing all the time out there. And they're very cool, but I guarantee you we don't, if we had chickens, it'd be bad.
No chickens. No. Well, if you did have chickens, I would be more than happy to lend you some guard donkeys.
The foxes come up and drink out of the horses' water bowls outside.
Oh my gosh, that's awesome.
Yeah, it is kind of cute. But anyway, now, how are we supposed to switch gears from that into a show about chilling and using your energy to not upset your horse? How are we going to go from
I think the word we're looking for here is anyway.
Well,
there's our segue.
Let's do a transition, and we're going to get to a lot of listener questions. You had a ton of them. We're going to get to those, but I wanted here too because you also got to go to Arizona and you took Guthrie along, and there's been a lot of the longtime listeners that have been asking you about Guthrie. Guthrie was her Road to the Horse from what? How many years ago is that now?
I think I competed with him in 2015, so I picked him up in 2014. So not that long ago.
It seems like you've had him forever. But you had what problem, and you were riding Guthrie at this show in Arizona, so I'm assuming that you've at least somewhat waylaid this problem. So tell us about what happened and what the fix was.
Oh my gosh. So he's moving better than he's ever moved. But so Guthrie's really interesting. And I'm just now realizing that perhaps that he's probably always had his issues since I bought him. So when I got him, he's a big, buff, ranchy quarter horse. And I noticed right off the bat that he uses his tail a lot. Like he kind of swishes his tail, not in a nasty way, but even from the first ride where, everything's cool and we're chill and we're riding for 5 minutes, he really uses his tail when he moves forward. And he's always been a really choppy, peg-legged mover. But, some horses just aren't that great at moving. But it wasn't until I was almost through my year of training. I had a year to train him, and then I was going to go to Road to the Horse and compete with him. All of a sudden he went acutely lame. I couldn't even tell what it was. And we went down this years-long rabbit hole, first of trying to figure out what the heck was wrong. It was in his front feet, both front feet. I've tried to rule out laminitis and foot conformation. I've tried to, redo his feet, have him make sure he's trimmed just so. I've had natural trimmers like flown out from states away to come help me work on this horse. Long story short, we find out that it's most people say that the horse has navicular, which is it's sort of a catch-all term for what they now call caudal heel pain, or navicular syndrome. So I've done X-ray after X-ray and corrective shoeing after corrective shoeing, and very little has made a difference. For Road to the Horse, I was able to get him sound. And this is before I knew we were dealing with navicular issues. We put some corrective shoeing on him. We injected his coffin joint, and I had him on a mild anti-inflammatory every day, Previcox. And he rode great. And I thought, we fixed it. He's done. We'll be able to wean him off this corrective shoeing. He's going to be great. And after Road to the Horse, I gave him a long time off. He worked pretty hard. And when I brought him back up again, I just could not keep him sound. I could not do it. I tried shoeing him every 4 weeks instead of every 6 weeks, and just nothing would do it. Finally, I bit the bullet and paid $2,000 and had an MRI done. And that revealed that he had significant changes in his navicular bursa and his navicular bone, and also a lot of soft tissue issues. And it was pretty much doom and gloom. The guy there who's like top of his field MRI vet said, if it was just this issue, you could do this. You could do this surgery. You could do this treatment. If it was just this issue, you could do this. He goes, but he has both. And he pretty much sent me home with there's nothing you can do. It was such a frustrating moment because, I'd say, well, what do I need to put him on stall rest? He's like, nah, just turn him out. There was nothing. I had no suggestions for him. So I thought he was done. I thought I had to retire my horse at the age of 5, and that was it. And I was just really bummed out because this was going to be my forever, my magnum opus masterpiece horse that I do all my finishing stuff on and showcase, and I had to retire him. So one thing I did ask that vet before I took him home is I said, well, can I try Osphos, which is this injectable, you inject it in their bloodstream. It's supposed to help with remodeling that area, but it also has an anti-inflammatory effect that they're not really sure why it does that. But it's had some really positive results. A lot of people have used it. I think Tammy Schranz has used it on her horse and had, she's still shooting off that horse, and he's like 18 years old. But he's like, yeah, you can. It was just more one of those things like, well, good luck, but yeah, whatever floats your boat. So I took him home, turned him out, kicked him out to pasture, and I thought, we're done. That's it. And finally, I went and hauled him to my local vet, who's a really great vet, and did the Osphos. But at this point, I was not even thinking, oh, I'm going to ride him next week. I was just hoping he'd be comfortable in the pasture. So I did the Osphos, and he said, I recommend you coming back in 60 days and chasing it with another shot. And then after that, you could go every 6 to 8 months. And I said, okay. And during this time, I was noticing that this horse was like running a lot across the pasture a lot more and just moving a lot better. And he seemed happier. And I thought, well, that's great. He's happy in his retirement. And when I went back for the second shot, I kind of jokingly made a comment about riding. And my vet said, well, I thought it was your goal. I thought that was always your goal, was to ride him again. And I was like, what? But the MRI. And he goes, those are going to, you put any horse in an MRI and they're going to find a lot of flaws and stuff. And so he said, yeah, give him a couple of days after this shot, start riding him again, straight lines, blah, 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 blah. So I did. He's moving really good, which I was really still not hopeful about, because I've given him significant time periods off, started riding him again, thought we were good. And then was starting to show discomfort again. But he kept riding really well. And we did a couple other things. We did decide to go ahead and inject his coffin joint and his navicular bursa. And this horse, it's amazing. He's moving fantastic. I've never had him. And my vet's really excited and really happy with it. And last checkup we did, which was a few days ago, he says you could do whatever you want with him. And
wow,
so
amazing. Now, are these shots really expensive?
Yes, it's like $300 to $400 a pop. And so it was a lot of money to do.
Yeah, but it cost you a hell of a lot more than that, doing all the testing and all the vets you did before that.
Yeah.
If you had started with that, it would have been a hell of a lot cheaper, right?
Exactly. And, it was still pretty new at the time that Guthrie first started doing this. And I didn't even know that, that's what we were dealing with. But and one thing I've learned about him, I think he's really a jerk. He was out to a pasture one day.
He was always lame.
I think he just felt uncomfortable, and that's why he was so nice before, because he was out to pasture one day, and this Mustang that I have, that is like the sweetest, calmest, most awesome little Mustang, gets along with everyone, that Guthrie has lived with for several years. He just decided he didn't like him. And he started running him all over the pasture like, I'm going to murder you, running him down. And I'm just like, my jaw hit the floor. I'm like, what are you doing? He did this for several minutes. And then at the far corner, he decided he was done. And he came trotting across the diagonal of my pasture, just so triumphantly. And he's throwing his front feet out there like a dressage horse. I'm like, man, I think you're really a jerk. And you just haven't felt good before. So
that happens.
He might have bucked me off.
It's like bringing that horse home from the auction when the drugs wear off.
Oh, yeah. Yeah.
Same thing.
They break into.
Well, he looked good. He looked good doing his thing. And I'm so glad he's back. I really am, because I know how heartbroken you were about that whole situation. Yeah.
I'm still kind of, I'm waiting for the other shoe to drop.
Optimistic.
I've been here before where I'm like, I'm gonna start showing you again. I enter him in one class and I get him out of his stall and he's walking like an old man. Like he never really outright limps, like head bobbing limp, but I can just tell, I can feel it. And it's one of those things that's like, yeah, I could probably get in front of the judge and get through this. I'm like, I'm not, if I know you're uncomfortable, I'm not doing that to you. But oh my gosh, when I trot him now, he's got these big movements with his shoulders, and I'm actually having to hold him back quite a bit, which is it's been wonderful.
Yay! Well, good for you.
Yay!
Easy, effective, and eco-friendly fly control starts with fly predators. Fly predators are the organic, natural way to dramatically minimize your fly problem. Learn more about fly predators and other Spalding Labs fly control solutions at Spalding, spalding-labs.com.
All right, let's spend about 5 minutes, Mary, on your training tip, and then we'll go into some of these listener questions.
I love how you have to give me a cutoff.
I do.
Because I'm going to...
I've done this show long enough with you, Mary. I've done it long enough that I know that we could go all day.
And
I like hanging out with you.
Subtle.
By the way, it's National Best Friends Day, by the way. So it's just appropriate that we're doing this show with you today.
Oh, that makes me feel good.
Just because I just insulted you, so I thought I'd make you feel better.
Horribly. I mean, you can't put a cap on my expertise and mastery, but we'll try, I guess.
Did you ever read Reader's Digest, Mary?
Yeah, way back in the
Okay,
day.
good. This is the Reader's Digest version of using your energy to change your horse's energy.
Fine. And we are gonna get into this with our guest a little bit. So one of the auditors, I can't remember who, tagged me in a post about I can't remember the exact wording, but being able to lower your energy and how that might affect your horse's energy. And it's just kind of something I've sort of done for so many years that I kind of forgot that it might be something that people aren't as aware of. And so I think it's a really great topic. Kudos to whoever brought that up. So when I talk about like your energy versus the horse's energy, I think it's something we feed off of our horses feed off of us. And one of the biggest things I see as a precursor to people falling off is them tensing up. And so I always have to tell people, relax, relax, relax. I put my assistant on a colt last night, and the colt kind of jumped, and I saw her knees shoot up and her heels shoot up, and I had to say, heels down, relax, 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 relax. And it's not only to get your seat back grounded and centered over your horse, but it will bring your horse down. You would be surprised at how many times letting go of the reins instead of snatching the reins will actually diffuse a situation. And it's totally opposite of our normal instincts. We want to kind of collapse our core, tense up, bring our knees up, bring our heels up. And then we have like this kind of electric seat. And so we do that. Then the horse feels like, oh, she's really scared too. And they freak out. And then we freak out more. And we just kind of feed off of each other until something really bad happens. And I always draw to mind this picture that I have of this cowboy I saw riding years ago. And he did one of the coolest examples of really good horsemanship I think I've ever seen. And I always think about this when I'm starting young horses or I'm on a nervous horse. And I was at this, it's called Stock Horse of Texas. So it's a ranchy Western event. We're doing cow work, we're doing reining, we're doing ranch trail, ranch pleasure. And I was in Abilene. It's a lot of West Texas cowboys with their taco hats riding around, and we're all in the warm-up pen getting ready for the cow work. And all of a sudden this other trainer, a guy I know who's a little bit, he's a little bit weird and acquires weird animals. He had picked up this, I don't know where he got it, but this Hackney pony and cart thing. And it's like the most foreign thing you can imagine at a West Texas cow horse show. And so imagine Scooter coming across the parking lot in this cart, and his little knees are going up and down, and it's making a commotion. Well, I was on a 3-year-old. I got right off my horse. I have been in wrecks where horses exploded over carts. I'm not doing that again. So I got off my horse and I'm holding him. And a lot of horses just kind of started spooking and scattering and jumping every which way. And one in front of me, it was this horse. This guy was riding around, and it started to really get upset, and you could tell,
Meltdown.
yeah, you could tell something bad was going to happen. So what the cool thing that this guy did, he did not touch his reins. He had a big loop slack in his rein. He didn't pick up his hand. He didn't touch his reins. He didn't grab his saddle horn. He didn't do anything. He didn't steer his horse around or anything. What he did is he relaxed. He completely deepened his seat in the saddle and just went like a sack of potatoes. Like he stayed center, but his whole body was relaxed. And the horse jumped left and right. And instead of him opposing that energy and fighting, by tensing up himself, he absorbed it all. Like he just kind of went with the horse. The horse jumped one way. The horse was saying, I'm going to spook over here. And the guy just kind of went with him, stayed completely relaxed. The horse jumped the other way. He stayed with him. And after a while, the jump started getting really slow and smaller. And the horse just totally, and this all happened within a few seconds. The horse just totally zenned out, mellowed out, and then just stood still, licked chew, relax, everything. And I thought,
that
man,
takes years though, because your natural reaction is just tense up and try not to die.
Yeah, or snatch on the reins.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
And
because you're holding, that's what you're using to hold on at that point. I mean, for most people, right? Because it's just your first reaction.
Well,
is to grab
and we
it.
wanna
When you're falling,
stop.
your
Yeah.
first reaction, or you feel like you're going to fall, your first reaction is to hold on, to grab something. So,
Well, and like, so this colt I was putting my assistant on yesterday, I was flagging her. So I was the one driving the horse and she's sitting up there, and I was having the horse make half turns, and, they're feeling the riders wait for the first time. So sometimes they stop and make a turn and they get a little goosey, and she kept trying to grab the reins. And I said, a lot of times if you snatch on that horse's face, you will create this energy that makes the horse go straight up or bolt forward. If you let him go, just let it go. Let the reins go. We're in a small pen. They're not going to go anywhere. Even if we were outside, there's an ocean on either side. You will stop eventually. But let him go. Yeah, right. That's an old.
although
on each
when my
side.
pony bolts, Jennifer keeps saying, well, he's only going to go so far. He's going to get
Exactly.
tired at some
You're
point.
going to run out of
Exactly.
road eventually.
Yeah.
And a lot of times if the horse is scared and we grab that rein, and if we grab it the way we're grabbing it, like not, if I feel like I gotta diffuse the situation, bend this horse down, I have to tell myself in my head, slow, 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 slow to pick up, quick to release, always. So even if my horse is really starting to go, I'm going to be efficient with my timing. I want to get it done quickly, but I have to have slow movements. I slide my hand down. I might have to pick up firm, but it's all slow, fluid as I can be, because the minute I snatch on their mouth, they're going to think they're trapped. And if they don't think they can run, the next thing they do is fight. If you take away flight, they're going to fight. And the fight is, I'm going to buck you off. I'm going to spook sideways. I'm going to rear up. I'm going to flip over. So a lot of times, you only get this confidence if you've done this a lot. So, it's kind of one of those catch-22s. But a lot of times before I go to pick up, I try to let them have their face. And instead of snatching on their face or tensing up, I do the exact opposite of what my body wants to do. And that's relax, 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 relax. Exhale, push those heels down, absorb your horse's energy. Don't fight with them. And it just takes practice and lots of hitting the ground, unfortunately, most of the time.
But in 20 years, if you have any bones left, you'll be fine. You'll be good.
Exactly. When you're like 97, you're going to be
You'll have it down.
Yep.
Yep. Well, let's go to I liked Allison's question here, and Allison trains Mustangs too. And by the way, welcome, Allison, as our newest auditor as of a couple days ago. She said, and this is a good question. She said, when starting a young horse, do you worry about leads at the canter in the beginning or just moving forward? My Mustang is just starting under saddle and will not pick up the left lead. Should I try and fix it now or just work on forward movement? Any exercises to help get him the correct lead? It's a good question.
That's a great question. And it's one I've kind of gone back and forth with over the years. So I like that she understands that forward is essential. And, all back to this energy and scary colts and everything. If you can get a horse moving forward, you are going to prevent a lot of trouble. And I don't mean fast, just moving out. So my general rule is I will sacrifice other things in order to get forward. So that might be the horse's lead or his inside bend or whatever. If, I want to make sure we get forward first. That said, the way I used to start colts, I would not care about their leads for like 30 days. Because in my mind, well, for those first 30 days, they're not going to know what hip control is or advanced hip control that it takes to set, I'm not going to be able to pick up that shoulder with that inside rein and do all this and that, the other. So I'm not going to teach them leads. And I used to let them lope around on whatever lead they wanted to. Well, when it came time to, I put enough body control on that horse and I'd say, okay, we're going to work on leads. It was always a huge fight. I always had one lead I couldn't get. And what I had essentially let happen is that horse got really good at loping the wrong direction on the wrong lead. So they kind of find a balance in that. And so there's nothing really compelling them to find the correct lead. And so I always got into fights with them. I could just never guarantee I'd have the correct lead every time. And so what I've learned, and a great example of this that really helped my mind get wrapped around it is I was at a Buck Brannaman clinic several years ago, and we were asking about cantering. And we asked the same question, do you care about leads? And he says, yeah, first ride, I want him on the correct lead. And so we're kind of like, whoa, how do you do that? Because he doesn't know. I can't even steer him at this point. How do I get the correct lead? And he told us, he said, you need to find out what lead your horse is in the trot and what lead your horse is in the walk, which I'm like, well, that their feet don't. No, they don't have leads. But he explained it. If I'm trotting across a pasture, across my arena, you can feel, especially if you've ridden a number of colts and young horses, you can feel like if I were to ask for the canter now, they would pick up this lead. Or if I were to ask for it over here by the barn, they'd pick up this lead. No matter how balanced your horse is, they're going to be kind of favoring one side or the other. And I'm actually going to use things like the barn or the arena gate or corners in my arena to help figure out what lead I'm going to get. So I may not have hip control. I may not have collection. I may not have all these like little buttons in order that I think I need to get the correct lead, but I can use my timing. So as I'm trotting around and say the far corner of the arena, usually they come off of that far corner. Let's say if I'm traveling to the right, going around the top left corner of the arena, almost always, if you ask for it there, you're going to get the right lead. Almost always. And there's things you can do to help them. You can open up your inside hip, weight your left stirrup a little bit more, look up. That's a big thing. I will lift the inside rein, even if it doesn't really do anything. I think it kind of lifts my body up and it sort of frees them up. And then I ask for it. And I'm almost always at this point able to get the lead I'm thinking about. If they don't get it, I'm not going to punish them. I'm not going to like break them down and twirl them around because they don't know. I'll just kind of allow them with my energy to go back to a trot, and then I will find another spot and I'll try again. And I don't push the issue. If I think it's going to be a fight, I will sacrifice getting the correct lead. It's not that big a deal, but I'm going to start planting that seed in my horse's head. When you're going left, we're going to be in the left lead. When you're going right, we're going to be in the right lead. And I'm going to be like a lawyer. One of the number one rules in being a lawyer, being a trial lawyer, is you don't ask a question you don't already know the answer to. So I'm never going to ask for that lead if I'm not sure what lead I'm going to get. I'm going to wait for the opportunity. It might take me 5 minutes of trotting around before I'm like, yep, I bet I could get this lead if I ask now. And initially, you'll only be able to get the correct lead in certain places. But if you only ask the question when you're going to get the right answer, and you get your horse in the habit of giving you the right answer over and over and over again, pretty soon you can ask that question anywhere and you'll get the answer you're looking for. Then later on, all the body control and collection is going to come in. Plus, one more thing, that's going to make your lead changes a lot easier, because if I have a horse for the first maybe 6 months of training, he's gotten in a habit of when we're left, we're going on the left lead. When we're going right, we're on the right lead. Then one day I might say, okay, we're going to go on the right lead and turn left. He's going to think if he's gotten so used to just keeping the correct lead, he's going to feel uncomfortable loping in the wrong lead, going the wrong direction. So then all I usually have to do at that point is switch my weight and say, hey, do you want to pop into the other lead? And they're usually like, oh, thank you. Okay. And it's very easy to get lead changes at that point. But if you've let him for months and months just do whatever lead he wants, he's going to get very, very good and very balanced at giving you a counter canter or incorrect lead.
Glenn's on mute and he's talking merrily over there, but I agree completely.
I think I made that. Oh yeah, this wasn't the one you gave me a time cap on. I was looking at the clock and I freaked out a little bit.
No, you're good. Now she's so scared that I'm going to threaten her.
I know. You need to have like a buzzer.
I do have buzzers.
Like a Simon Cowell buzzer.
I have one of those. I could
Yes.
I could help you. There's one question before we have to take another break, and that is Carly wants to know how she can teach her chicken to play the Star Spangled Banner.
That is actually a terrific question. The answer is, it really is actually.
Did you see that, by the way?
Yes. So the backstory of this, she's not crazy most of the time. Carly's only semi-crazy.
Yeah, she's a little crazy.
Crazy enough to be an auditor.
Yeah, that's right.
So I think it was Carly who posted a video of this chicken on, was it America's Got Talent?
It's America's Got Talent from 2 weeks ago. Yeah. They have
Oh
some
my
really
gosh.
good ones this year. And
They
that was just
really
bizarre.
do. That one was amazing. So these two women get up there with their chicken and they say, oh, our chicken will play the Star Spangled Banner. And so they're like, okay, go for it. And they put the chicken down. And for like a solid, I don't know, 15 seconds, this chicken was doing nothing. And I was just like,
it was
oh
doing
my gosh.
something. It was preening itself, licking its butt.
Yeah.
I mean,
And they kept having to like push it over to the piano. I'm like, oh my gosh, this is going to be a disaster. And then all of a sudden when the chicken was like, okay, I'm pretty and it's go time, it just hammered out the entire Star Spangled Banner in one go, which was crazy. And so what they most likely, I'm almost 100% positive, used with that chicken was positive reinforcement, because if you've ever tried to get a chicken to do anything with like,
you have a better chance of getting the cat to play the Star Spangled Banner.
Exactly. Well, here's a funny story. So they have, and I think it's on the East Coast, they've all over the country, these chicken training camps. And you train a chicken. They have several different courses, but you'll train a chicken to like do an agility course, like weave poles.
You are making this up.
Nope. I'm not. And I really want to do it, but it's like $3,000.
For a chicken training camp?
Yes. And here's the reason you're doing chickens. It's a lot of dog trainers do this. And I think it'd be terrific for horse trainers too. And the reason dog trainers are learning to train chickens instead of going to, say, a dog training camp is you're going to have a lot of preconceived habits. If you're wanting to change a lot of dog trainers who want to change to positive reinforcement or learn positive reinforcement, you come to it with a lot of bad habits. Like, oh, I'm going to pull on your leash to get you to do this. And the thing about dogs is dogs want to please us. They're very smart. So they'll go along with it. But a chicken is not so. They have a short attention span. They're not naturally inclined to please anybody but themselves. And you can't like put a choke chain on a chicken. You can try. It's not going to work. You're going to have a bad time if you do that. So they're able to like form these new good habits using this sort of clean slate and getting a chicken to do all of this stuff. And chickens, it's amazing what they have gotten chickens to do. And the Star Spangled Banner is one of them. And what essentially this is to me, it looks like what I would call a behavior chain. So obviously they didn't put sheet music in front of the chicken and say, okay, here's your music, have it memorized by America's Got Talent. They taught the chicken to target.
Sure?
I'm pretty sure. I mean, maybe. I'm not a chicken trainer or anything, but so, they taught it to target the first key. And probably clicked and treated, and they got that behavior to happen over and over and over again. They probably put it on some sort of cue. Either it's a visual cue, like the chicken sees a certain mark on the piano or whatever. And then what they probably did is taught it to target a new key and then did that over and over and over again. And then what they started to do was link those two keys together. So you touch this one and then this one and then get a click. And they just keep adding that new link on the chain. Now do this key, and this key. Now this key, this key, this key, and this key. And you can build those chains up to really high numbers. And it's something I actually do in horse training. And I just did a version of it this last week when I went to Arizona. You can train a horse to do this behavior, then 2 behaviors, then 3 behaviors, all in a row for 1 click and 1 food reward. It's pretty cool. So yes, totally possible.
Here, and, I thought that you were just going to say, I don't know how they did that, but you actually came up with a training solution for it.
Oh, yeah.
Totally the thing is, and we talked about this with Jamie the other day, chickens, we had chickens. Everybody's had chickens, knows this. Chickens find 85 ways to die prematurely. They must be keeping this chicken in like a gold cage, completely immune from other chickens and any outside influences so that this chicken can make it to the finals.
What I would do is have many backup chickens.
Yeah, you better have something.
I think that's the key.
Can they use a backup chicken? I don't know.
I don't know. Who's going to know?
That's the actual contestant right there.
Yeah, so, who's going to know?
I think this was good for ratings. for America.
Yes.
Do you think Simon just drools when an act like that he knows is going to fail actually works, and he goes, "Oh God, this is going to go so viral." They just pray for this.
Yeah.
Yeah.
The only thing that would really impress me is if that chicken had more than one song in his repertoire.
Well, we're going to find out when the chicken comes back.
Oh my
Can't play
gosh.
the
See,
same one.
what they should have done is say he's going to play Twinkle Twinkle Little Star, and then Mary Had a Little Lamb, and like all those songs that have the same melody, and no one would be the wiser.
Oh, that's true. Look at you, musical
Yes.
talented Mary,
I'm
picking up on that.
Oh, did I not tell you I played clarinet for 6 years?
My mom and dad met playing clarinet in the band. We were married for like 40 years after that.
Oh,
So take up clarinet again, Mary. You'll find the love of your life.
I know a lot of clarinet players, and that's not going to happen.
All right, let's take a break, and we'll come back and we'll do another question before we get to our guest.
Recharge your training program with Equestrian Plus. Equestrian Plus brings together top riders, trainers, and professionals onto one video platform. Watch over 5,000 how-to training videos, clinic and event footage, exclusive training sessions, and more featuring top experts including 5-time dressage Olympian Stefan Peters, 5-time Olympic show jumper Ann Krasinski, Olympic eventer and silver medalist William Fox Pitt, and more. Join Equestrian Plus now and use promo code HRN15 for 15% off your first month. Visit equestrianplusplus.com to subscribe.
All right, let's do another one. Which one do you want to handle? Which one do we have time for here? Do you want to take next?
This is so hard. Okay, here's a good one. Last minute question. Stephanie Eileen said, tried doing the Tarp thing, folded up small, got to be able to rub him with it, open it somewhat on his back, but couldn't for the life of me get him to put a foot on it. No matter what I did, he'd get close, but then not step on it. I stood on it. I pulled him forward. I released pressure. Released pressure and praised for getting closer, but that's it, to the point where he'd be drawing a compass circle around us with his butt. Okay, that's a very good one. I find that horses fall into two categories with the Tarp. One of two categories generally. Either they're really cool with you touching them with it, or they're really great about walking over it. I don't always have one that's great with both right off the bat. So with the Tarp, one of the things that you need to have on the ground is pretty decent foot control. So this is more than just, well, I can get my horse to go in some circles around me and I can lead him from point A to point B, and he sort of backs up sometimes. Really work on, can I move your hip 1 step? Now, can I bring your hip back? Can I move your hip 2 steps? Can I move it 4 steps? Can I move your shoulder? Can I move your rib cage? Can I get you to back off easily? Can I get you to come forward off of halter pressure? If you have those things in place, it becomes much, much easier to get your horse to put his feet on the tarp or trailer or whatever is spooking him. So if I can direct my horse's feet with 100% precision, that's going to be impossible, but that's the goal. That's what you have, on a pedestal, is I can be able to put my horse's feet anywhere I want him, when I want him, 100% of the time. And you can take that power and put his feet over and around and through things. The other thing I see that is a really bad habit of people trying to get their horses over and on to obstacles is they get in front of the horse and they pull them. Really bad idea. One, for safety, because say you're on the tarp, standing in front of the tarp, trying to get your horse to come on the tarp. You pull him onto the tarp. He steps on it. It makes a noise he doesn't like. A lot of times the next step is them jumping in the air and on top of you. So don't get in front of your horse when doing this. Another reason this doesn't work is you might be able to get your horse to follow you over an obstacle. But the problem is when you get on, I've seen this happen. People can lead their horse through an obstacle if the horse is behind them, but then they get on and the horse won't go. Well, he has nothing to follow now. So I get in a habit of being able to send my horse, drive them over an obstacle. So I'll stand behind their shoulder and point at the tarp and then use some driving energy from behind to get them to go over. That's going to be more similar to the energy I'm going to use when I ride. Another thing that I will do if a horse is just, I know they're going to have a huge problem with it. Usually by the time I get a tarp out and throw it on the ground, my horses all walk on it. But this is what I've done. Instead of just getting a green horse out and saying, please get on this tarp, I work on, can I move your hips? Can I move your shoulders? Can I get you to back up? Can I get you to come forward? Can I get you to side pass? Can I get you to go in a circle this way? Can I do this at any gait I want, any speed I want? Then by the time I throw a tarp on the ground, I have such good control with my horse, and my horse understands my cues so well that it's a tiny issue to get them to cross the tarp. It's not a huge deal at all. But every once in a while you get one that's just got a phobia. So what I will do is I will fold the tarp into like horizontal wise into a million times until the tarp is like pencil thin. So I've got a long, skinny tarp. And I will ask my horse to cross over it like I would a ground pole. It's a lot easier for them to go over it if they can see the other side clearly. And they might jump over it, and that's okay. We'll keep crossing it until they just step over it easily. And then each time my horse successfully does that, then I will unfold it just once. So now that I had a skinny, maybe 6-inch wide tarp. Now it's like 10 inches wide, and they'll cross, and I'll get them to cross it several times. And then I'll unfold it one more, and then one more, and then one more. And by the time you get it to where your horse has to step on the tarp to cross, they have crossed over it so many times. You're going to have a much better chance of getting them over that tarp without too much issue.
Very good. Jennifer, anything to add to that?
I totally, driving the horse over versus leading him over, I think that's where most of us go wrong. It's at the beginning. And now that the horse has learned to circle around it like a wagon wheel, now we have to back up because now he's already learned what he thinks is the correct way to do it.
And that's another thing is, and when I say leading, you can lead your horse over, but I make sure that I'm not in front of the horse with them leading behind me. I'm standing either at or slightly behind their shoulder, and we're going over together. So you can lead them over in that aspect. Yeah. Again, it's a big safety thing. And if you do lead a horse over in that way, be prepared to block them. Sometimes they will decide not to cross the tarp and instead run over you. So be ready to kind of throw a hand up, create some energy. My rule is you don't have to cross, but don't run over me. And that's another thing. Do not put pressure on them at the tarp. If I have trouble getting them forward, I'll move them away from the tarp, work on our go button, and then I will create a lot of energy, maybe 10 or 15 feet from the tarp. And I like to release them at the tarp, let them smell it, let them take their time. I'd rather release my horse over an obstacle than wail on them over an obstacle.
Because then they associate the obstacle with the pressure. And something that if you have to back up even further, because I've spent most of my life working with remedial horses, I've rarely had the opportunity to start with a blank slate, is if the horse cannot go happily, comfortably, and confidently over a ground pole, maybe you need to start there first because a ground pole is going to be a lot less intimidating. Yes. And you can take a teensy weensy baby step towards tarp by going from ground pole to a 2x6 plank instead of a ground pole, because that's a piece of wood that's wide, but it makes that piece of wood sound, if I touch it, a little bit less scary, and add visual volume to the obstacle in micro steps. And that might be of good use if you have a horse that's in that remedial phase of tarp. He's already started, this is the way I deal with tarp, and now you have to back up a little bit.
You can also buy I have one of these, it's yellow, but it's a canvas tarp. So because
those here.
Yeah, it won't make the crunchy as bad. It'll still be an odd sensation for them to step over it, but it's just like if you can break it down and take it one step back, like we talked about this last month, behavior lumping versus behavior splitting. So crossing over a big open scary tarp can actually be 1,000 tiny behaviors. So just, break it down, break it down, break it down.
All right, very good. Well, let me give your guest a call, and then you can introduce him. Once we get him on, we're actually going to be calling him live today. So, and hopefully we can round him up. And you know that whole Tarp thing. If you went to Road to the Horse, you see that played out in every competition.
Hello.
Hello, James.
Yes.
And this is Glenn, and you're on Horses in the Morning. I'm here with Mary and Jennifer. I hope you're well this morning.
I am well. It's a beautiful day in Western Massachusetts.
Okay,
where I happen to be today.
Cool. Well, Jennifer, Mary's going to introduce you. We haven't done that yet, so go ahead, Mary.
So I brought James Shaw on to talk about the, we kind of got this theme going of energy and using your energy and working with the horse. And James works with equestrians, and his unique background is he's an expert in martial arts, including Tai Chi. So if you would, can you tell us a little bit about your background in martial arts and how that led you to work with riders?
Sure. First of all, I don't consider myself an expert. I am a lifelong student, and I always think the minute I become an expert, I'm no longer a student. However, I have a lot of experience. So I first started in martial arts back in '83. And it was more of a kind of a spiritual quest, if you will. There was just something missing in my life that I thought this kind of mystic kung fu stuff that I'd seen on TV would be the missing link. So basically, I studied a kung fu system where they did Tai Chi and a harder style, we would call it, of kung fu. And most of my time was spent at what we would call a kung fu temple, because it was a spiritual, we looked at the mental, emotional, spiritual side as much as the physical side of the art. It was a healing art. It was taught as a healing art and a fighting art. And that's where the Tai Chi came in. There was a tremendous amount of Chinese medicine involved with Tai Chi. So I spent 15 years there, and that was in Long Beach, California. And I was there, for the most part, about 6 days a week, 6 hours a day. So I completely dedicated my life to learning and then being able to teach this system of kung fu. And like so many things, the master kind of became a guru and wasn't really teaching anymore, and it was more about business. So I had to leave. And when I left, which I thought was a horrible thing to happen in my life, which turned out to be the best thing that ever happened in my life. When I left, I met a little Chinese lady. I say little because she was tiny. And I was much, much bigger, stronger, and faster than she was. And she taught Tai Chi. And I had heard that she was a phenomenal teacher. So I went to her, and she, the first thing that she said to me was, "You have some of the best bad habits I've ever seen, and I'm not going to be able to teach you, because people don't change these bad habits." She said, "You've perfected them over 15 years. And I think I started crying. Not really, but I was just distraught. And I finally convinced her if she could at least show me what the bad habits were. And then if I couldn't change them, I understood, but I did. And everything that she taught me and flowed back into what I learned at this other school. And it's those lessons, it's those techniques that I use to work with riders. There are some things that, in my previous school, I thought I knew because I understood the philosophy, and I could tell you what the application of the philosophy was. But in my body, I'd never really developed the ability because I was still using force against force. I wasn't receiving the force of the opponent, if you will. the energy, if you will, and letting it move through my body into the earth and then redirecting it.
And that, yeah, that subject right there is what I think is really amazing, because I've read on your website you're talking about force and against force, and I wondered if that was a concept that was more specific to Tai Chi than other martial arts. And it's something that when I read that exact force against force term, I thought, oh my gosh, this is with the horses. This is like one of the biggest problems, and it's something I have to overcome. And we talked about this a little bit earlier about when my horse decides to spook or bolt or buck, I tend to, instead of just sort of absorbing that or yielding to it, I tend to fight back. I want to grab on my horse's face, and I just wanted to point that out. I thought that was a really interesting point, and definitely a cool relationship between horsemanship and martial arts.
Yeah, and it's my experience is that even most Tai Chi that we're going to learn does not really it's like the teachers don't necessarily understand what it means to receive and redirect force. They don't know it in their physical body. They certainly know it intellectually. They certainly know that you do this and I do this, like the techniques. But just like riding, there's, in the area that I'm visiting this week, there are 100 riding instructors in a 20-mile radius. But they're not all, and they all teach riding, but they don't all teach it the same. So the martial art, while yes, there are some martial arts that we are vested in using force against force. And all that means to me is if you do choose the path of force against force, then you have to be bigger, faster, and stronger than the force you're opposing, or else you wear down very quickly. And in riding, that force is the power of a horse. And, I'm a big, strong guy, but the smallest mini is bigger, faster, and stronger than I am. So let alone another, a horse that we would ride. So that, to me, it's really important to understand for clarity, for long-term clarity, that the first two forces that I define, because we have to define it, otherwise, it could be a misunderstanding of force or energy. So the first two forces are the power of the horse that's created when the hind feet push into the earth and the earth pushes back. And I think they call it earth resonance force. And, that's what pushes back. It's that force that we get to receive through our sit bones. Hopefully that force, we remove the blocks in our body, and that force carries through our skeleton and eventually back to the horse. And the force of gravity. So we look at those two forces. And when you control those two forces, it actually seems quite magical, because it's, a horse that's never moved this way all of a sudden moves this way effortlessly. And I think that's for me, and they're all words, it's not, anybody can use the word effortless, but when you get in line with these two forces, gravity and the power of the horse, things become effortless, because there's no separation between you and the horse. And again, like I said, that could be very philosophical, and it'd be a nice title for a book, but the techniques and the applications and the development of the ability to apply these principles is where the true difference comes in. And
I don't know if this relates, but one of the things that I've always it's been a word that's floated around horsemanship, and a lot of people use it, and I think a lot of people misunderstand it, is feel. And you've got people like Ray Hunt who talk about a feel, following a feel, and you've got to use feel and timing and all of this. And it's something that I've always felt I've always had a certain feeling about, can't put it into words. It's almost tangible and almost like you were saying, it's almost magical. And then I had someone ask me, well, what does feel like? Define it for me. And I totally could not do that. And I was wondering if that was something that you've come across. Do you have a concept of your own of feel that you can define, put into words for people to understand? And does that relate to all of this that we're talking about?
Absolutely. Absolutely. I love that you think about feel that way. I'll tell a very short story about it. I was working with a world-class rider, and her daughter, who was also a very high-level rider, said that she was commenting on feel, and she said that's why it takes 20 years to develop this feel. Now, I had just started working with riders, and I'd come out of this working with this phenomenal, her name was Wen Mei Yu, Tai Chi teacher. And I couldn't say anything because my mind is saying that you don't know what you're talking about. Because in Tai Chi, we start to, and not arrogantly or rudely, but just like, oh, that's an uneducated, naive view of it. Because in Tai Chi, we teach feel from the first moment. And it is so defined, like feel is a product of what in the West we would call our right brain, our creative mind. That's where, I mean, there have been studies that will show the brain firing, fantastically on the right side when you engage in these exercises to create feel, if you will. So, and the Chinese call it the yi mind, Y-I, yi mind, which is maybe roughly translated spirit mind. So the left brain that would like to figure feel out and make a mathematical formula for it, if we're doing that, we're not even in the right part of the house, right, to find it. So yeah, feel and sensitivity can be developed, but it first starts with an expanded awareness of ourselves. In other words, I have to feel where my weight is, where gravity is, if you will, in my feet, and be able to feel, wow, my right foot feels heavier, has more contact on the ground. That's how you develop feel. I believe it's much more efficiently and quickly developed on the ground, and then you already have it to apply in the saddle. I think we get confused sometimes, or we think that I have to ride more to develop feel. I just have to do it more to develop feel. And it's not really like that. It's almost a skill that is teachable and developed. And you can develop it. But knowing that, you have to expand your awareness. You have to completely postpone judgment. And I'll get to that in a second. You have to expand your awareness, and you have to be really quiet, and you have to listen. I almost think feel is the word even falls short, because to me, feel is listening. It's listening to myself. It's listening to my body. It's being aware of these subtle changes of weight. Even while my foot's flat on the ground, my weight could be in the heels, or it could be in the ball of the foot. Yeah, most of my students, when we initially do these, training feel, they feel their heels on the ground, and they think, or they feel the ball of the foot on the ground, right, the heel and the ball, and they think their weight's in the balls of the feet because they're thinking about the ball of the foot, and their awareness is on the ball of the foot, but the weight's actually in the heel. So we do this little push thing, and they immediately go back in their heels. So it's things like that develop feel. So it's absolutely, it's one of the things that I quietly believe I go around doing, is increasing people's feel and sensitivity by distracting them from their thinking mind, right? And this goes into, I have some dear friends they just do liberty work. They so into it. and I get to work with them on feeling their own weight shift. We usually feel our weight shift in pounds, tens of pounds. But horses see weight shift in ounces. And if we don't know, if we're not aware of that, because, I don't fall down when I walk, so I'm doing pretty good. But I think horses see it and react to it. And then because we're unaware of the reaction of the horse to some shift in our body, and unfortunately, sometimes that shift of the horse's reaction, with good intent, people that don't understand it start calling it energy. I raised my energy. I did this, or and then I want to go, oh, but did you know your weight shifted to the left and you dropped your shoulder, and the horse did the same thing.
Oh, wow.
So it absolutely relates to feel, and in Tai Chi, which I don't teach Tai Chi as the form anymore to my riding clients and my golf clients. I teach them these things. I teach them the things that really make Tai Chi or internal martial arts, which Tai Chi is one of them, really make it work effortlessly, meaning that I do not have to get stronger if my horse starts to buck. I have to actually relax more so I can, if you will, take that big push of force into my spine and get rid of it through my spine, because anywhere I tighten up, that force is now just going to push me. I'm going to go with it, kind of like getting caught in a wave. You can go under the wave, or you get caught with it and it drags you up on the beach. If you go under it, you pop up on the other side, and you weren't, caught in that force. So that feel is a byproduct. Well, no, it's not a byproduct, but it's the product of a heightened sense of awareness and this ability to question what we believe we know. For instance, and I said I'd talk about it later. When people think their weight's in the balls of their feet, they go, no, I can feel it. It's right there. But then I put 2 ounces of pressure on them, and that 2 ounces puts their whole body back in their heels. Their weight was in their heels, but their mind didn't think so. Their thinking brain, their left brain, didn't think it was. But all of a sudden, with no force, 2 ounces, what is that? A half a stick of butter. We have a saying in it's physics, but it's also martial art, that you can redirect the force of 1,000 pounds with 4 ounces of pressure. And I say that, and then I say, if your aids are ever more than 4 ounces, and that doesn't always sink in because the left brain is thinking about 4 ounces, but 4 ounces is a stick of butter in the U.S. We buy a pound of butter, it's a quarter stick of butter. And I ask them to hold that weight in their hands, like picture a stick of butter in your hands. And I go, are your aids, leg, rein, seat, any heavier than that? Then we're using force.
Wow.
So it's pretty intense, but we teach feel, and in teaching feel, by expanding our awareness of ourselves, being able to say, well, I think I know, but maybe I don't, is a fantastic state to be in with all of this stuff, whether you do liberty or you're riding, upper level competitive dressage. That Chinese lady, Wen Mei Yu, she used to tell me quite often, as I remember, and she would say, if you think you know, you're unteachable. And the first couple of times, because I came in with 15 years of experience, I thought I knew. I should know. I've been doing this for 15 years, 6 hours a day, 6 days a week, dedicated my life to it. You learn something. But she was saying that what I learned was not the whole truth, but I believed it was. So in believing it was, I was not open to her teaching. And it's very funny because she told me that for a long time. And after a few months, I thought, she was 68, so she was 70 by the time we were getting into the depth of this training. And I thought, she's getting old. It's either her favorite saying or she forgot. She told me, if you think you know, you're unteachable last week. So one day I walked out and I went, oh my God. Every time she's telling me, she's observing that I think I know what she's talking about there, but I don't really, and I'm unteachable. So that's a huge lesson that I try to, just instill in people, because most of the folks I work with, they've ridden for years before they get to me. Once in a while, I get people who have just, but I'm not really a riding instructor. I'm not I don't consider myself, we'll put it this way, I don't start people riding, and I'm not a horse trainer. I kind of train people, and I just happen to train them in the saddle to deal with this force greater than themselves, gravity and the horse. But I don't, so what I'm saying is that the people that come to me and the folks that are probably listening, they've already achieved a really high level, a depth of knowledge in what they do. And it's, that can actually be an anchor that slows us down or drags us holding on to an idea that we think we know, instead of being open-minded and go, maybe I don't really know what, and you were so perfect when you said it, when you tried to define feel. If you can't define feel, it's like, well, maybe I don't know that as much as I thought about it.
Yeah. And
Does that make sense?
Oh yeah. And I've had a few moments of this, horse training. I had been training for several years, and I thought, I'm pretty darn good. And I had a guy, a very good trainer, ask me, he was asking a group of us at a clinic. He said, well, tell me what happens when the horse is cantering. And it took me a few seconds to I had to kind of almost put my hands out and like, oh yeah, this foot does this. And he just looked at me. You're a horse trainer and you can't explain this. So you don't really know. And so I had to really, sit back and think, oh my gosh, that's kind of a basic concept that I've been riding a canter for years and years and years, but I didn't really know what one was. So I think as a horse trainer, you definitely, or anything that you've been doing for a while, you hit those moments. Of course, the moment you're most confident is when you learn a little, like in the very beginning, you learn a little. And, it's what I call being at the top of Mount Stupid. That's when your confidence is really high and you think you know everything. And then all of a sudden you're hit with the weight of all that you don't know, and you shoot all the way down, and then you slowly build your confidence back up over time. But yes. And that feel question, someone just, because most people in my circle of horsemanship, this whole natural horsemanship movement, and they sort of revere the guys that started this. And these guys were, when you were talking about your Tai Chi instructor, it kind of reminded me of like Ray Hunt and Tom Dorrance, and that they always seemed to talk in riddles, and they would never just like take someone by the shoulders and shake their shoulders and say, this is what I'm trying to tell you. They would just say something over and over and over again. And I've heard almost an identical anecdote of a young rider thinking, well, this guy's really old and he's kind of lost it. And maybe I caught him at the end of his days and I'm not really going to get all the best knowledge from him. And then years later, they're hit with the realization of, oh, he was trying to tell me this the whole time, and I was just too ignorant to see it. And I thought that's kind of a cool parallel between what you're going through and what I've experienced and what others have experienced. But with, on the concept of feel, it's almost I've almost found the term to be like an emperor's new clothes type of deal, where like, if you have to ask, then you don't know. And then finally someone did ask, like, no, really, tell me what it is. And I was kind of like, oh, it's this thing that you have. And it was very difficult to actually explain it. Yeah.
Because I totally agree with the emperor's new clothes scenario, and I used to use that quite a bit because it's rampant in the martial arts world where somebody that might look the part and they speak in riddles, and which quite often means that they don't know how to teach it. Meaning like when somebody says feel, and we say, well, it takes years to develop, or that's true if we don't know how to teach it, right? And this happens quite a bit, like the canter. If you're if you can't explain like what I'll give you a very, very specific scenario. Because martial arts, one of the first principles is all movement comes from the center, and the center is synonymous with your seat in riding. But beyond that, what it means is your center is your pelvis, your sacrum and lumbar spine, and your femur bones. So those, let's say, 4 bone structures, or depending on how you count, those bones are your center. They are your seat. And the bones are important, more important than the muscle, more important than, flexibility. The bones are important because they are what transfers the force of gravity and the force of the horse through your body, right? Bones transfer force, muscles don't. So when I define it like these bones are your center, either you can use them the way they were completely use them the way they're designed, or we get by. And so in the canter, if I think, okay, explain canter, not just what the horse is doing, but what is, and maybe I'm a little mental about this, a little bit, ahead of the curve, but we can tell you exactly the movement in your pelvis in relationship to your lumbar spine, in relationship to your femur. Then I know canter in myself, because the horses already know canter. I've seen a 4-month-old horse canter in the field beautifully. So it goes back to a Chinese a saying from the Tao Te Ching. Knowing others is wisdom. Knowing yourself is enlightenment. And I like to I use that for myself. I can know all the movements of the horse. I can define the canter of the horse really well. Maybe. But can I define it in my own seat? Because I also believe, that if everything I do in my body is absolutely mirrored, or I believe magnified in the horse. So if I have tension in my lower lumbar, meaning it holds its curve, and it kind of becomes a fulcrum for the lever of the spine to apply force to the back of the horses, through the saddle to the horse's back. If I'm tight in my back, the horse is tight in its back, but I'm kind of, the horse is kind of like an elf, and I'm a troll. They feel ounces, and I barely feel pounds. So when that tension or that tightness is put into the horse's back, I cannot receive its force, right? It hits my back and it pushes me forward instead of up. And it, the same thing happens in the horse's lumbar spine. When that power of its hind foot pushing to the earth pushes back, and that force travels through the bones of its leg into its pelvis, through its sacrum. It never gets out of the sacrum because of tension at the lower back. And then when the next pulse of force comes up, it hits that block, if you will, and it has to go somewhere. And it usually bounces back. And then you have two forces, one coming, one like a head-on collision that happen in the hock and stifles. And I absolutely believe that it is these blocks in the rider's back that wear out hocks and stifles, and why it's epidemic in the world, in the riding world,
Wow.
and we don't look at and not to get heavy about it, but man, can you imagine if we just for a second think about it, maybe from another perspective, not throw out the old belief, but just, postpone it for a second. And we realize, oh my God, I mean, most people love that my horse mirrors us. We think it's an amazing thing. And I remember teaching a group of British Horse Society fellows a couple years ago, and I was saying how, they love horses. They kind of tolerate people, and everybody smiled like, yeah, I'd much rather deal with horses than people. And I said, I love people. I like horses. I love people. And, I know that horses mirror us. And they all smiled. And I said, and it should terrify you because what we don't know about ourselves gets mirrored in the horse. And then because we don't know it's coming from us, we think it's the horse.
Wow.
So we spend time trying to get to know the horse. Sorry, I know that was a long story to make.
Oh, not a problem.
And hopefully I love the natural horsemanship movement. I love the ancient classic. I love riding in itself. And I think with this, the genius of this ancient, Chinese art, and it's not just Chinese. Every old culture probably has this, knowledge somewhere, but it's not common knowledge.
And I hate to have to run in. We're gonna have to jump in here. We are fresh out of time, but it's been a fantastic conversation. God. And if people would like to start learning more about this and find some good resources on some of the concepts you're talking about, where can we find you?
They can find me at ridefromwithin.com. So ridefromwithin.com is my website. The website's being kind of upgraded, so it says it's being worked on, but it's still fully functional. They can email me at james@ridefromwithin, and on the website they can find my calendar. I teach all over the world, so we can, plenty of opportunity to come meet me. And there's on YouTube, if you there's a lot of these concepts and techniques explained that you can see in action. Yeah, because I always say the horses prove my work, not
wonderful.
Not me.
And we will post those links online on the website. And I want to thank you so much for coming on. Definitely gave me a lot to think about. Pleasure. So I'm really excited to put some concepts into action.
Thanks, James.
Fantastic. Thank you so much.
Of course, you can find Mary's website at
MaryKitzmiller.com, or you can find me on Facebook at Mary Kitzmiller Horsemanship.
And we'll be back tomorrow. Send your really bad ads into Jennifer at horseradionetwork.com. And she would love to get your ads so we can do them, play them tomorrow on the show. Either play them or read them tomorrow on the show. You can record them yourself. You get double credits for that. And we have lots of great prizes this month as well. So we'll see you tomorrow for the Friday version. Thank you, Mary.
All right. Thanks.
And you would think I would be queued up with the closing music. Oh, there it is.